So there's so the basic rule is if your research project or research study involves human research participants, then you are required to submit an ethical application form. These forms are at the undergraduate, the UG, and the taught postgraduate TPG level. These the whole process is handled by a committee within the Department of Cultural and Creative Arts. That committee is the DRDC, or the Departmental Research and Development Committee. So I'm part of that committee, and that's all. Both of those levels, the Department of Cultural and Creative Arts gives the approval for the ethical application process to take place, and a very important part of that is that the approval or endorsement, which is given by the head of department within the Department of Cultural and Creative Arts, must be obtained before any data collection can begin. Okay, so let's so moving on. So the first section is the completion of the application form itself. Okay, so what you'll do is, when you, as part of this whole process, the first thing that you will do is to complete an application form. That's called the application form for ethical review. It's about a 7 or 8, 9-page document, and for the most part, I'll give you the links later on where you download this form from. But it's very for the most part, it's very, very self-explanatory. You'll be asked your name, the program that you're participating in, the department, your personal contact details, together with your principal supervisor's name, the title of your research project, and how long the project lasts for, the duration. And then after that, the area or the field of research that you're engaged in. So all of that, I think, is should be very, very self-explanatory. After that, you come to a couple of questions. This is all within part 1, which is called the summary of the application. Question 7 will ask you the purpose of the research. It actually says 2 to 3, the explanation next to that is 2 to 3 sentences explaining the main goal of the research. So really that, as it suggests, just 2 or 3 short sentences which kind of give a summary of the research and what you hope to achieve, what these sort of the main outcomes of that research are. The following question, number 8, is the methodology of the research. And again, what they're really after is a concise description, but this time really focusing on what the participants of the research are going to be required to do. So in other words, the kinds of observations or procedures that the participants are going to be required to take part in, or any kind of tests, measures, instruments, that kind of idea. And alongside that, the details of how long that participation is likely to take. For example, if it's interviews, you might say, okay, well, I'm going to be doing semi-structured interviews with my research participants. The interviews are probably going to last in the region of an hour each. And the interviews themselves are going to take place, perhaps particularly at the moment, online. So the methodology of the research is kind of really concerned a little bit more with the concise description of what the participants are going to be required to do. But it doesn't need to be anything more than about 200 words. You want to use language that is understandable for a non-specialist, because I'm going to be looking over these applications in the first instance. So keep it to language that, if I don't know your area, which is a pretty good chance, then keep it to sort of language that I can follow. And as I say, clearly indicate what the human participants are involved, what they're going to be required to do as part of that methodology. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Okay, so you'll then, that question 7 and 8 are then followed by a bunch of other questions all the way through to, I think it goes through to 11. Again, they're pretty self-explanatory, so I won't go through those in detail now. And we then come to part 2, which is called the Ethical Review Checklist. Okay, so this is a list of about 15, 16 statements or questions that you are required to indicate a yes or a no for, depending on what your study will involve. If you put yes, or if you check yes to any of the questions, then you are going to be required to give a bit more information or elaboration in box, which is a box marked S at the end of the list. So it goes from A to R. S requires you to give a little bit more information. Of course, I don't know what your research studies are going to be about or your research projects, but I would think for the most part, the only one that you're really likely to check yes for is going to be box A. And box A says, will the study involve research participants who are not able to give informed consent? So in other words, that's referring to minors or individuals who are under the age of 18, or individuals who may be mentally handicapped. And so if you are going to be, if your study does involve working or with those individuals, then you have to check yes. And then, of course, as I say, you'll be required to give some more information in box S at the end. There are a couple of other, of course, there are a number of other categories as well. I've just made a couple of notes here. I've said it's not standard practice for personally identifiable information. That is covered in box C, or question C, to be revealed. So normally what I mean by that is that we would usually use codes, person X or person A, rather than giving their particular individual information. And I've also said that under no circumstances are financial inducements, which is covered in question G, to be offered to participants. Okay, so there should be no money changing hands, just in case that's something that you might be considering. Another very important part is that to make sure that any stress or anxiety on the part of the participants is kept to an absolute minimum. And similarly, the study shouldn't be placing anybody in a position where their general welfare is likely to be compromised. So you shouldn't be giving information that might lead them to getting into any trouble with anybody in authority. That's a kind of, you should be ensuring at all times that their welfare is being looked after. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so once you've completed your box S, that's if you've checked yes to any of the questions in the checklist, there is a little bit of information in the ethical application form underneath that, which is intended to give you some helpful guidelines to obtaining consent in the case of minors. So minors being people under the age of 18. Okay, so we have a research and development office at the RDO in EduHK, in the Education University here. So basically the rules, if you like, are that any individual under the age of 9, if your research is going to involve any participation from students under that age, then their parents or guardians must fill in the consent form on their behalf. So they are considered too young to be able to give consent of their own free will. So we ask or request that the parents or guardians fill in the form on their behalf if they are 9 years and under. If they are between the ages of 16 and 17, they can fill in the form themselves if the study is clearly directed at them and it involves minimal risk. I won't go into what minimal risk really entails. That's a little bit detailed. You'll be able to find all of this information is expanded. Everything I'm saying now is expanded on in greater detail in the application form itself. So I think you'll be able to see what that involves. But I would hope that every application that crosses my path from you will be considered minimal risk. So I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so part 3, details of the application itself. So the first question in that section asks you to state the potential risks, if any, and measures that you are going to take to minimize those risks. So I've said here that only genuine risks such as financial, physical, psychological, or social need to be detailed here. Again, I would hope that that's not going to be the case anyway. Anyway, along with any proposed measures for alleviating those risks. And I think probably in just about every case, you're going to be writing what I've put as the third point here, that it's going to follow the standard procedures so that you can simply insert no potential risks in that box. And then going on to the next one, next slide, thanks. Okay, so the box underneath that is kind of really more what I'm interested in here. It's called Methods for Ensuring the Confidentiality of the Research Data. Okay, so it's important to make sure that the data that you're getting from your participants, whether they're students, adults, whatever, that you look after that data and ensure that it is kept as confidential as possible. That means that essentially only you are accessing the data, and that you are storing it safely so that nobody else can access it. So we ask students to state very clearly where the data is going to be kept. For example, is it going to be kept on a PC, or is it going to be kept on a USB? Who is going to have access to that data? That really is only you yourself. And if you are going to be keeping it on a PC, I ask that you indicate that the data is password protected. The third point is how you're going to ensure that the confidentiality is maintained. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that's going to be by anonymizing the participant's identity. In other words, saying person A or person X. You're not going to be using their real names in your study. And finally, when you're going to destroy the data, and that, depending on your study, may be when you submit your research study to the program or to the supervisor or whoever you're required to do that to. So those 4 elements are required to be stated on the ethical application form. Please make sure that you ensure that all of those are stated. Again, there are a couple of questions which follow that section. I won't go through those here. They are pretty self-explanatory. Probably don't need me to go through those individually. All right, so then part 4, very important. These are the attachments or the documents that I require from you to accompany the covering application form. The covering application form is what I'm going through at the moment. So in addition to that, I want from you a research proposal, the full research proposal. That should accompany the application, and also consent forms and information sheets. These can be given in the language that is going to be used for the participants. These spell out in detail what your the people that you are targeting for the research study, whether that's parents, whether that's students, and as the name suggests, the consent form, it's the form that they sign that gives you permission to interview them or to get data from them, whatever you're going to do. But you need to get their consent in order to proceed. So I need that. And I also need the information sheet. The information sheet should accompany each group of participants. So in other words, there should be an information sheet if you're going to be getting consent from parents. There should be an information sheet if you're going to be getting consent from students. And there should be an information sheet if you're going to, for example, approach a school or an organization of some kind to interview, or whatever it is you're going to do, the members of that school or the members of that organization. So think of the consent form and the information sheet as a kind of a set of documents in its own right. So a consent form and an information sheet for the groups of people that you're going to be targeting. And then I also want a list of sample interview questions or questionnaire or survey, whatever your data collection method is. It doesn't have to be the final version. So just a sample of those is fine, but just so I can see what kinds of data you're going to be collecting from these individuals. So to sum up, there are 4 elements to the ethical application package. So there's the covering application form. That's what we're doing now. That's what I'm talking you through now. There's the research proposal. That's the second part. There's the consent form and the information sheet, or sheets, depending on who you're going to be getting your data from. And then there is a list of interview questions or survey, whatever it is you're going to be doing, giving to your participants. So those 4 elements. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. Next slide. Okay, so then part 5, there's a declaration at the end that requires you to sign and sign your name, write your name, and give the date that you're submitting your ethical application. I always ask students to, as part of this whole process, to go through this application with their supervisors to make sure that because the supervisor has to sign and date this, of course, as well. So you're both going to sign and date this, but the other purpose in doing this is to make sure that the supervisor is happy with everything that you're proposing to do in your research study, that he or she is happy with the methodology. Of course, you'll be discussing all of this with them as part of your discussions with them over the course of the course that you're doing, I dare say. But I want to know that I want to feel sure that the methodology makes sense, that the goals of the research project are clear, and that the methods that you're going to use to get your data, to collect your data, are practical as well. So when you've both looked through the ethical application form, you've got all of these supporting documents, the proposal, the consent form and the information sheet, and the sample questions, you should then both sign and date this application, and your supervisor effectively at that point says, okay, I'm happy with this, and that's the kind of the first part of the process completed. Okay, now then, I've included a slide here which is intended to give you the link, which will give you the links to the, within the university, we have the, what's called the Human Research Ethics Committee, or HREC. They have their own set of guidelines, which we are kind of required to follow. And they have their own website or webpage within the university site. And so there are a series of links which I've given you here, which you can access. There's the University Guidelines on Ethics in Research. Click on that link. There's a The procedures for ethical review, that's pretty much what I'm going through now. The application form, that's what I've just talked through, so that's where you can see that and download. You can download all of these, of course, from the same source as well. There are some examples that they've given you so that you've got some something to refer to, and there's a leaflet for ethical review. So click on any of those links and you can access those particular files as well. That will, I hope, help you to assist you in your completion of the application, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory as well. Okay, let's go on. Now, what I've also done for your reference as well, I've been through, I haven't, not the research proposal and the sample questions, those I think are going to be unique to you. But what I have done is I've put together a sample version of the ethical application form. That's what I've just been talking with you just now. So I've put myself in the position of a student. I've called myself, of course, Ethical Wong. And as Ethical Wong, I have completed the application form, given all the information that I've just been talking about with you. And yeah, I hope everything that you, any questions you may have would probably, I think, be covered in that sample version that I've done. And I've also done the same thing for the consent form and information sheet. So these are, so I've imagined that I'm a student, that I'm going to be doing this research study, and that I am presenting the information in the form, in the application form and the consent form and information sheet. And if you wish to refer to those to help you with the completion, I think probably the easiest thing is if you contact me directly for those. I'll be giving you my email address. That's part of this PowerPoint slide as well. So if you want me to send you those to help you, then I'm more than happy to do that. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so you've now done, I hope, the whole application. You've completed the application form, you've signed and dated it with your supervisor, you're both happy, you've got your supporting documents in the form of the proposal, the consent forms and information sheets, and the sample questions. Okay, so now you're going to submit the application. Okay, so what I request that you do is that either you or your supervisor, I don't think it really matters, is that either of you or one or both of you send me the soft copy of that application with all 4 elements combined into one PDF, and then you submit that to me when it's ready. So that's me, Dr. Whitbread, and my address is gruhk.hk.hk. So send that to me, soft copy please, PDF file. And then what I will do when I get that is I'm kind of the first level of inspection, if you like. So I carry out the initial check or inspection of your application. If I'm not clear about something, if I think something doesn't really make sense, or if I think something is missing or something needs to be revised, whatever it is, then I will get in touch with you. You will have given me your contact details on the first page of the application, so I will get in touch with you and ask you to supply what I need or to clarify something with me in the case that something is unclear. You will, I hope, get that reply to me very quickly with the information that I need. And then once I'm happy that I've got everything, then I will then pass that on to the second person to check. And because your master's students and that your research studies, I think, will pretty much all involve visual arts related themes, then there are 2 colleagues that I won't be passing on to both of them, one or the other, 2 colleagues within the department who will sort of do the second level of checking. So they're kind of, if I've missed anything, then they may pick that up. They will look over that as the second check. Okay, and when they've done that, okay, next one, please. They will then pass your application back to me. if they're not sure of something, if they've flagged something that they want to further clarification or revision or whatever it is, then I will again get in touch with you to request that from you. That is then, as far as I'm concerned, that is everything is then kind of complete, and then the final stage of the process is that the application is passed on to the head of department, the HOD. That's Dr. Tam, and he gives the signed approval. So then the ethical application has been approved. The original document, in other words, the one that you submitted, or documents, of course, all four in one file, everything, the original is returned to me. I will return that to the supervisor. We have, all the supervisors have a letterbox. So I put that in their letterbox, and I let them know at the same time by email that your ethical application has been approved. Your supervisor will then contact you and let you know that information, and equally importantly, that your data collection can now begin. So just to reiterate, you should not be doing any data collection at all until the application has been supervised and you have been informed of that. So you should only begin the data collection when your supervisor emails you to say, okay, it's a go, you've been given your application's been approved, you can now begin your data collection. Okay. Apologies that the writing is a little bit small here. I basically said what I've just said to you. I've just put that in a kind of a little workflow chart for reference. I won't go through that. It's basically saying what I've just been talking about. Okay, next one. Okay, so you submit your application to me. It goes through the second level of checking, comes back to me. Then I submit it to the head of department for final approval. If it all goes through smoothly and there are no issues, it goes from me to the second checker, back again, and then to the head of department. It's difficult to give an exact time frame of exactly how long it will take, but in the region of a week to 10 days to be approved. Of course, that's going to take, if I have to get back to you, either initially or depending on if the second reviewer has any queries, that's going to make the procedure a little bit longer. So whether I contact you, so when I contact you, I mean, whether it's at the initial level or after the second checker has been through it, whatever it is, the sooner you take care of the issues and resubmit everything or whatever I ask for back to me, the sooner the entire process can be completed. Just so it's easier for me to deal with as well, if I send you, what I will do is I will send you, if there are any changes to be made to the covering application, I will attach that to the email that I return to you. You can use that one to reply to me as well. In other words, make any changes or revisions to that file. That's particularly helpful when because by that stage I've got both your signatures, your signature and your supervisor's signature on the application. If you do a new file, then it may not have your supervisor's signature on it, for example. So please reuse the same application document that I attach when I reply to you. Then I know that I've got all the subsidiary information already there, especially the signatures. Okay, so if you could make sure you do that. Okay, next one. Okay, don't forget to submit. Okay, so I don't know the timeline of your research project. That will depend entirely on you and the course that you are doing. But as a general rule, especially in these times where we're dealing with students or participants who may not be easy to access for particular reasons, the sooner, it's essentially the sooner that you submit your ethical review application, the better. And essentially, the sooner your application is processed, the sooner you can begin collecting your data. So it's in your interests to get those to me at your earliest convenience, and then I can get you through the system.